Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where and when you are joining us. I am your host, Katie Milton Jordan, and today we are starting a new AI action class on the gap and the gain by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. So let's take a look at our gap and gain, our AI action class today. So this workshop will be running March 19th through April 23rd. However, there are two Thursdays in there where I will not be available. So make sure that you look at your schedule and block off March 19th, April 2nd, April 9th, and April 23rd. Those are the 4 dates of this workshop series, and there are 2 weeks in there where we will be taking a break, which gives you guys a little extra time to apply your learning from this series. So the first thing I want to say is I encourage everybody to read the book. The best way to go deep on these ideas is to read The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This workshop series is a starting point. The book is the full experience. We focus on AI fluency, not necessarily the book, but we use the book as the tool to focus our AI fluency and have an opportunity to interact with the concepts inside the book. But the best way to go deeper on these ideas is to read their work directly. So, how an AI action class works. If you're joining us for the first time, this may be a new concept to you. So, here's the agenda that we follow in every AI action class. We spend a few minutes at the top of the call doing welcome and context. Then we spend some time talking about the specific concepts in the body of work that we are studying for the workshop series. Then we have about 20 to 25 minutes to actually apply these concepts with AI. You will have an opportunity to run the AI workflows as I'm demonstrating them live on screen, or you're welcome to watch the demonstration and run the AI workflows independently after you've seen it modeled. And then we'd like to come back together as a community at the end of the call so we can share our thoughts and insights. And since I am still having troubles with my technology, I've got the lovely Chelsea here with me today. So Chelsea, if you see that I go back into small screen mode, will you give me a holler so that I can adjust that on your end? Thank you. And this is very casual and interactive, so if you guys have questions or comments as I'm going through the presentation, don't hesitate to pull yourself off of mute and ask a question or share a comment. You can also do that in the chat as well, and Chelsea will be queuing up questions for Q&A at the end of the call. So the core idea of the book, The Gap and Gain, is that there are two ways to measure yourself. Most people measure themselves against an ideal that we'll never reach. That's the gap. The alternative is measuring backward from where you started. That's the gain. So same progress, but completely different experience. And we had a student in last month's workshop series, Tiny Experiments, suggest this book, The Gap and the Gain, and I thought it was the perfect book to complement the work that we did last month in the Tiny Experiments experience, because now we structured our tiny experiments and now we get to look at, how are we moving forward. And I think that the gap and the gain concepts are going to be real supportive to us as we do that. So again, the difference between the gap and the gain: the gap is measuring forward. Compare where you are to where you think you should be. Results in us always falling short. Perpetual dissatisfaction regardless of real progress. And the gain is measuring backward, comparing where you are to where you started, recognizing real progress, building confidence, gratitude, and momentum from what's actually happened. I'd like to add that when you take a look at the neuroscience behind this, our brains like to look forward to things, right? So measuring backward gives our brain a dose of dopamine because because we're looking at gratitude and we're looking at things that we're looking forward to instead of looking backward and feeling inadequate. So this is a perfect complement. So here is the 4 series mapped out on the screen. We have 4 workshops and we are going to be working towards 4 deliverables. So here are our 4 workshops and 4 deliverables. So today's workshop is from the gap to the gain, measuring what matters. We're going to shift from ideal-based measurement to backward-based measurement of progress. The key topics we're going to cover in today's workshop is the gap versus the gain, 3 reference points, ideal, current, and starting, why high achievers get trapped in the gap, reframing success as distance traveled, and the deliverable that we're going to be creating today is the gap gain audit. This is an assessment of where you're measuring from the gap across work and life with reframes to gain-based measurement. Now, in workshop 2, we will talk about transforming experiences into gains, learning to extract gains from any experience, wins, setbacks, and everything in between. Workshop 3 will be engineering your reference points. Take control of what you measure against by designing intentional reference points. And the final workshop 4 will be building a gain thinking operating system to integrate gain thinking into our daily, weekly rhythm so it becomes automatic. Thank you, Chelsea. Okay, let's take a look at our workflow. So as always, we've got our URL up here at the top. It is bit.ly/AI formula, all one word. That is the URL. Chelsea, if you wouldn't mind pasting that in the chat. AI formula needs to be capitalized, all one word. That is where you're going to go to access the public drive and get your workflows. So let's take a look at the workflow today. I always encourage people to read the introduction of the workflow and then scan the steps in the workflow so that we have the context for what AI is going to be asking us to co-produce today. So here at the beginning, we can see that we are asking the AI, we are asking the AI to act as an expert in gap and gain thinking. Drawn the principles from Dan Sullivan and Dr. Hardy, the gap and the gain, the role is to guide us through creating a gap gain audit, which is an assessment of where we're currently measuring ourselves from the gap, comparing to an ideal across work and life, with specific reframes to gain-based measurement, comparing to where we started. Okay, so let's look at step 1. We're going to map our current goals and ideals. Step 2, we will identify our gap patterns. Step 3, we will measure our actual gains. Step 4, we will build our gap to gain reframes. And step 5 will be the final deliverable of the gap to gain audit. So let's go into our public folder. You may see this screen asking if you want to continue to the destination. This is a public folder in my Google Drive. And over here on the right hand side, you can see the gap and the gain AI action class. And here is today's workflow. So again, we just scanned this information and we looked at all the steps in this process. So let's go down to the bottom and copy our entire workflow just like this. And I'm going to be working in Claude today because that has been my favorite daily driver recently. And so here you can see Claude up on the screen, but you are welcome to use any LLM that you prefer. These tools are LLM agnostic, so you're welcome to use Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, whatever works for you. So I pasted the entire prompt in there, and I'm going to go ahead and hit run. Okay, we've got our gap gain thinking coach. We're going to go through a structured gap gain audit. And AI adds, this is one of the most practically powerful mindset tools I know. The core idea, most of us measure ourselves against an ideal we'll never fully reach, which is the gap. But when we flip the lens and measure backward from where we started the gain, the same progress looks completely different. The gap isn't about your goals being wrong, it's about where you anchor your measuring stick. An ideal always recedes as you approach it, your starting line never moves. Here's what we'll work through together. Map your current goals and ideals. Inventory what you're measuring yourself against, identify your gap patterns, find where gap thinking is actually showing up, Measure your actual gains, look backward at how far you've genuinely come, and build your gap to gain reframes. Convert each gap pattern into a gain-based perspective. Final deliverable will be our audit document. Before we dive into step 1, would you like a brief summary of the key concepts behind the gap and the gain thinking? And I'm actually going to say yes. And here is where I'm going to illustrate. This is one of the ways that AI can help us personalize and customize education in these business and personal development books at scale, right? Because now I'm getting a summary of the key concepts, and I can also ask it to summarize these concepts based on what it knows about me. So it can speak to me as the individual learner and customize this content so that I get even more value out of this summary. So the gap is measuring forward against an ideal. Okay, the problem isn't having ideals. Ideals are useful for direction. The problem is using them as a measuring stick for happiness and progress, because ideals by nature always move. The moment you reach one, it shifts. You get the promotion and immediately focus on the next level. You hit a revenue goal and the goalpost moves to 2x. You're never there because there keeps relocating. Gap thinking sounds like I should be further along by now. Everyone else seems to have figured this out. I've done a lot, but it's still not enough. Gap thinking feels like chronic dissatisfaction, even in the middle of real success. So the gain, measuring backward from your starting line. The gain is what happens when you flip the measuring stick. Instead of looking forward at the ideal, you look backward at where you started. The question changes from how far do I still have to go to how far have I actually come? Your starting line never moves. The progress is real, permanent, and measurable. And when you train yourself to measure from it, the same objective situation produces a completely different internal experience, not complacency, but grounded confidence. So gain thinking sounds like a year ago, I couldn't do this at all. Look at what exists now that didn't exist then, and I've learned things that can't be taken away. I like that sentence. The key distinction, the gap is not about your circumstances, it's about where you place the measuring stick. So two people can have identical results and one feels like a failure, while the other feels genuinely proud. The facts are the same. The frame is everything. So let's move into step 1. Map your current goals and ideals. In this step, we're taking inventory of the ideals you're currently measuring yourself against. This should be the benchmarks that define how you evaluate your own progress. This gives us the raw material to find your gaps. 3 questions. You can answer them all at once. Area by area, or whatever feels most natural. Question 1, your active areas. What are 3 to 4 areas of your work or life where you're actively measuring your progress? Business revenue, client pipeline, thought leadership, health, relationships, a specific skill, but use your own. Question 2, your ideals. For each area you name, what does success look like? What's the ideal you're comparing yourself to? The honest version, not the humble version. Oh, I love that, right? Question 3, where the ideals come from. For each area, did you set that ideal or did it come from somewhere else? Culture, peers, industry norms, a specific person, an old version of yourself, etc. Take your time. The more specific you are here, the more useful everything that follows will be. Now, I have been working with Claude for quite some time. So Claude knows me very, very well. And one of the things that I love about these AI action classes is that it can make answering these questions a lot easier than the way that we used to do them in the past, right? I can simply say, answer these questions based on what you know about me. And AI is going to fill in the blanks, and it's going to give me a really incredible starting point that I can then edit and say, yeah, you got that one right, or no, that one wasn't quite right. So you're going to see me use my Whisper Flow tool to tell AI to do that specifically. Answer these questions based on what you know about me, and once you do, I will provide feedback and suggestions that you can include in the next iteration. Okay, there we go. I'd also like to add that one of the biggest values of being in these free AI action classes is watching how I am using the AI tools. There are not very many people that are using the AI tools the way that we are in this cohort, so there is a lot of value to be taken away from just watching these tools being used. So, step 1, here's what I know based on what I know about you. Life area, business revenue and client pipeline. The current ideal should be generating consistent, predictable retainer income, enough to feel stable without chasing every project. Yes. The source of the ideal, mix of self-set plus entrepreneur culture, recurring revenue. If you don't have that, it's not a real business. How it feels when you compare. Anxious undercurrent, even when wins are happening. The pipeline never feels full enough. True story. Thought leadership and visibility. Should be a nationally recognized name. People should be coming to you, not requiring you to pursue them. Source of ideal, partly self-set, partly industry peer comparison, watching others build platforms faster. How it feels when you compare. Proud of real traction, but a quiet voice saying others are further along. Yes, that is also true. Operational capacity and team should have a fully functioning, systematized operation that doesn't depend on your personal bandwidth for every decision. Comes from entrepreneurial ideals and your own consulting and systems expertise. I know how this should work. And when I compare myself against that, it feels frustrated because you know what good looks like and the gap between vision and daily reality is visible. Yes, it's definitely visible. Personal sustainability should be able to lead a high output business and maintain calm, grounded presence. Embodying, think smarter, live calmer, lead with soul. Yes. This comes from self-set, deeply held, but also tied to your neurodivergent experience and the pressure to prove the model works. And this is the one that cuts the deepest because it's the most personal and the hardest to fake. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Does this accurately capture the ideals you're measuring against? I'm going to say yes. Yes. Proceed. Okay, let's identify our gap patterns. We'll examine where gap thinking is actually showing up. The places where you're measuring forward against an ideal instead of backward where you started. Gap thinking sounds like, I should be further along. Other people have already figured this out. I've done a lot, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Yes, that is true. I feel that in my bones. 3 questions. Align, again, answer all at once or area by area. Question 1, where's the distance loudest? For each of the 4 areas we mapped, where do you feel the biggest gap between where you are and where you think you should be? Which one wakes you up at 3 a.m.? Ooh. Which one do you avoid looking at directly? Ugh. Question 2, what do you tend to focus on? What do you think about your progress? In any of these areas, do you naturally land on what you've accomplished or on what's still missing? Be honest, there's no right answer here. Question 3, the painful one. Is there an area where you know you've made real significant progress, but you still feel dissatisfied or like it doesn't count? This is usually where the most important gap pattern lives. Yes. Okay. And now we are going to see a real model of, an emotional lift, right? Like these questions feel uncomfortable for me. Right? Like emotionally uncomfortable. Like I'm not sure I want to answer them. I want to tell Claude, like, answer these questions for me. Don't make me do the heavy lift. But let's try to do some excavating here and answer these sincerely. So the first question has to do with where's the distance the loudest? Which one wakes me up at 3 a.m.? Which one do you avoid looking at directly? Okay, the one that wakes me up at 3 a.m. is business revenue and personal sustainability. Those are the ones that are hard to look at directly. Okay, and question 2, what do I tend to focus on when I think about progress? Do I naturally land on what I've accomplished or what's missing? Yes, I definitely naturally land on what is still missing. And that's why we're doing this AI action class, so that we can reframe and measure from how far we've come instead of how far there is still yet to go. So I still tend to focus on the gap. And the painful one, is there an area where you know you've made real significant progress, but you still feel dissatisfied or like it doesn't count? Okay, this is going to be a bit of a vulnerable share for me because I do have an answer to this, and I appreciate you guys for being real, sincere, authentic humans and holding space for me as I share. So the painful one is the area where I know I've made real significant progress. I am a first-generation college graduate, and when I graduated from college, that wasn't a thing that existed. I didn't even know I was a first generation college graduate. And now that I do, and I look at how far I've come, I know that I have made real significant progress because I have overcome a lot of things and learned a lot of lessons that folks who may have started further down the path than I have didn't necessarily need to address. So I think that this may be connected to where the most important gap pattern lives for me.
Katie, it's
Okay.
Sean.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Okay, Katie, what you just shared about being first generation college graduate, that's not a small thing. That's the foundation everything else is built on. Hold that for a moment before we move into the patterns because it matters for everything that follows. So here are the 3 gap patterns I see showing up clearly for you. The unwitnessed starting line, areas affected, business revenue, personal sustainability, and thought leadership. Because you started without a map, no family blueprint for business ownership, no inherited network, no model for what a person like you building a company looks like, you unconsciously compare your current position to people who started further down the path. You're measuring your chapter 7 against someone else's chapter 7, not realizing they began on chapter 3. The progress is real, the starting line just isn't being counted. Gap pattern 2, the moving goalpost, areas affected, business revenue and operational capacity. Each time you hit a milestone, a new client, a new system, a new framework, the ideal shifts just far enough to stay out of reach. The contracts get signed, but the question becomes, is it enough? This isn't ambition. This is the gap masquerading as ambition. Interesting. Ambition pulls you forward. The moving goalpost just makes forward feel like standing still. True. Gap pattern 3, the proof burden. Areas affected, personal sustainability, thought leadership. Because your tagline, think smarter, live calmer, lead with soul, is also your personal standard, there's an invisible pressure to embody the model at all times, not just teach it. The gap here is subtle but exhausting. You feel like you have to earn the right to say it by living it perfectly. Yes, that feels true. First generation founders, especially neurodivergent ones who built their own frameworks from scratch, often carry a disproportionate proof burden, the sense that you have to work twice as hard to establish what others get assumed. Yes. Do these gap patterns resonate? I'm going to say yes. Let's move on to the next step. Let's get out of that achy emotional territory, right? Measure the gains. Yeah, let's do that. This is the pivot. We're flipping the measuring stick. The question changes from how far do I still have to go to how far have I actually come? I'm going to draft this one for you based on what I know. Yay! Look at AI taking the initiative. Thank you. Way to go, Claude. I'm going to draft this based on what I know. Go back 12 months from where you are, March 2026. Ooh, yeah, that was a tough month. The gain measurement table, where I was in March 2025. This is also where we get to see if AI is going to be like a toddler and say something really embarrassing that I don't want out in public. Okay, so where was I in March 2025? Newly launched, simple EDO, just departed, Cur EDC, no established client base, building from zero with an idea and a credential set. I still feel like the vomit in my throat. Where I am now, March 2026, active contracts, retail attractions, Chelsea onboarded, yay for Chelsea. Delivered work, pipeline or contracts in the pipeline. Went from 0 client revenue to a functioning consulting practice with named clients, retainer structures, and a pipeline. In 12 months, I built a real business from nothing, not a concept, a functioning practice with clients who came back. Thought leadership, a year ago, known regionally in Texas economic development circles, no national AI or EDO positioning. But over the last year, I didn't just enter a new field, I helped define it, and people are now paying to learn from me. Yay! Operational capacity. A year ago, solo operator, no systems, no team, every function dependent on personal bandwidth. A year later, I now run a multi-client consulting firm with a team, systems, and a design identity, but built entirely in year 1. Yes, there has been a lot of progress in this first year. Personal sustainability. A year ago, leaving a demanding W-2 role, uncertain about income, no proof the model works, carrying the full weight of the leap. Yes. A year later, I took the hardest leap of my professional life and didn't just survive it. I built something worth pointing at. Wow, that makes me feel like proud in my chest. When you see your goal progress laid out this way, does it change how you feel? Yes. And is there anything missing from this table? No, that's great. It makes me feel proud in my chest. I feel warm tickles. Thank you. All right. Warm tickles. That's exactly what the gain feels like. So now we know how to recognize it when we experience the gain. Right? You might use some different adjectives to describe what it feels like for you, but the gain feels like something. And when you can communicate what it feels like, it will help you recognize it when you're there. That feeling is data. It's your nervous system recognizing truth. Nothing about your actual situation changed between 5 minutes ago and right now. The same work, the same clients, the same leap. The only thing that changed was where you placed the measuring stick. That's the whole lesson. Ooh, wow. Talk about a lesson right there. Wow. Okay, so carry that into step 4 because we're going to use it as evidence. Build your gap to gain reframes. We're going to take each gap pattern from step 2 and convert it into a gain-based way of seeing the same situation. These reframes aren't about lowering your standards. They're about changing what you measure against. So 3 questions before I draft your reframe map. For each gap pattern, what's the specific thought or internal voice that triggers it most often? Question 2, is there a specific person, peer, or benchmark you're comparing yourself to that you'd be willing to name and release? Which gain from step 3 feels most solid to you, the one you most believe, even on a hard day? And yes, I am feeling the temptation to ask Claude to answer this for me. And I'm also recognizing that I will get more out of this if I do the heavy emotional lift here. So let's look at the gap patterns so I begin to identify the thought or the internal voice. So the gap patterns are, scroll back up, here's my gap patterns. The unwitnessed starting line, started with no map, the moving goalpost, and the proof burden. I'm thinking that these are probably saboteur voices. For question 1, I think that these are probably saboteur voices that trigger the gap patterns. Like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have enough wealth to have the luxury of making these decisions, that I need to work harder because that is what integrity is, and your work ethic is who you are as a person, and life isn't easy, and you need to figure it out no matter what, even if you don't have any resources and you're hanging on by your fingernails, right? Those are my saboteur voices, guys. Welcome inside my head. Okay, question 2. Is there a specific person, peer, or benchmark you're comparing yourself to that you'd be willing to name? Yeah, this is an awkward one. For some reason, I feel like the specific peers or benchmark that I compare myself to are bro marketers. And I don't even like bro marketers. But why do I feel inadequate when I see their Ferrari and I don't even want a Ferrari, but I really would like a pool in the backyard? So bro marketers, that's my benchmark that I know with my head I shouldn't even be comparing myself against. Okay, so which gain from step 3 feels the most solid, the one I most believe even on a hard day? Which gain from step 3? Okay, so which gain statement? I think the biggest gain statement for me is still going to be tied to revenue. So in 12 months, I built a real business from nothing, not a concept, a functioning practice with clients who come back and are now paying to learn from me. Okay, so now we've got our responses recorded and we are going to put those in and see where they take us. Okay, your gap to gain reframe. Before I show you the table, can we just name something? You're comparing yourself to bro marketers and you don't even want a Ferrari, you want a pool. That's not an inadequacy problem, that's a misaligned measuring stick problem. You've been using someone else's scoreboard, one that doesn't even track the things you actually value. That's the gap in its purest form. And those saboteur voices, first generation, neurodivergent, bootstrapped, hanging on by your fingernails, those aren't character flaws. Those are survival scripts that got you here. They just don't belong in the cockpit anymore. So what does belong in the cockpit is definitely AI, but it's not driving this ship, right? Gap trigger. I'm not good enough, smart enough. The actual gain, you built a nationally recognized niche practice in 12 months that didn't exist before you earned it or created it from a first-gen starting line with no inherited map. Gain reframe. I didn't need a map. I made one and people are now following it. The daily cue. When the voice shows up, ask good enough compared to what starting line. Okay. I don't have the luxury of these decisions. You left a W-2, launched 3 ventures, onboarded a team, and are now negotiating 40 to 100K renewals while living in a community you love. I'm already living a life that required extraordinary decisions. The luxury was never money, it was courage. I love that line, and that is true. When scarcity thinking hits, name one decision you made this year that required real courage. Ooh, that's a good one. Work harder. Your ethic is your integrity. My integrity is in the quality of what I build, not the volume of hours I bleed. When you feel guilty resting, point at one system you built that works without you in it. Yeah, Claudia, I built an email agent. She's my receptionist. If you want to test her out, Chelsea can put her email address in the chat. Figure it out, even with no resources. I don't have to hang on by my fingernails anymore. I built handholds. Oh, I like that. It's still a baby step, right? Like, it's not like I'm good. This is like easy peasy lemon squeezy, but it goes from fingernails to handholds, right? Post this somewhere visible in your workplace. They have a Ferrari and I'm behind. I'm not behind on their scoreboard. I'm winning on mine. That is true. When bro marketer content appears in your feed, say out loud, wrong scoreboard. Do these reframes feel true, not just positive, but honest? We're going to put it into the audit. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Okay, so here is our complete gap gain audit. And I'm also going to say in advance so that you guys have a few moments to get your heads ready. It looks like we are going to wrap up our audit a little bit early today, which means we are going to have plenty of time in community for Q&A, feedback, and insights. So start to think about what questions you might have, what feedback you'd like to share, and how we can support you on your next steps. But for now, I'm going to go into step 5 and take a look at the complete gap and gain audit. So section 1, here's our current ideals inventory. We've got our life area, our current ideal, we've got our source of ideal, and how it feels when you compare. Then we've got section 2, our gap patterns identified, the unwitnessed starting line, the moving goalpost, and the proof burden. Section 3, the gain measurement table. This shows my life area, where I was a year ago, where I am now, the actual gain, the gain statements. Now, again, if you have not been working with AI as long as I have, this may not be in your AI memories, and you may have to actually fill in the blanks, do that emotional lift, and I encourage you to stick with it and do it because the deliverable will be valuable to you in your next steps. So we have section 4, the gap to gain reframe, the gap trigger, the actual gain, the reframe, and the daily cue. So section 5, one key insight. It says the distance between where I am and where I think I should be was never real. It was a measurement error. I'm using the wrong starting line, someone else's scoreboard, and a goalpost designed to stay out of reach. The gains were always there. I just finally counted them. Section 6. So, one commitment. Starting this week, I will measure my business progress from March 2025, not from an imagined ideal. When the saboteur voices appear, I will ask one question, compared to what starting line? This concludes your gap gain audit. The gains were always there. Now you can see them. Now, I'm going to turn this into an HTML that I can load into my CEO operating system that will help support me in business and life. Can you turn this into an HTML file so that I can save this to my CEO operating system so that these insights can help support me even more in business and life? Let me know what questions or clarifications you might have. I always like to ask AI that question because sometimes it recognizes gaps that I don't know. And it can frequently make some really good suggestions that I may end up incorporating. So it says no questions. I'll use your simple EDO design system, which I created with AI the other day. So it fits right into your CEO operating system. So the deliverable that it's creating for me now, you guys are going to see, is going to be created according to the brand style that I put into the brains of my operating system. All right, let's take a look at what it's doing here. Okay, you can see it is writing the code, and it's writing code faster than any human could. I had a wonderful call with a woman leader yesterday who was asking me about AI, and she's like, well, do you have to do a lot of math? Because I'm not good at math. And I said, listen, girlfriend, I'm not good at math either. I said, I'm an artist just like you. Here's the good news, guys. We don't have to know how to code. I don't need to know how this clock tells time. I just need to know that it's creating the deliverable that I need. And when I look at the deliverable, I am able to say, is that good or is that not good? And that is the simplistic version of our quality assurance check, because as humans in the loop working with AI, we are the arbiters of quality. So if AI produces a bad result and we publish it and make it public facing, and there's an error, is that bad AI or is that bad human, right? And that's a trick question, because as humans, we are the arbiters of quality. And if we partner with AI to create a deliverable and the deliverable is flawed and we choose to publish it, that is irresponsible leadership. Okay, here we go. Here is our gap gain audit. I'm going to move this over so we can all have a quick look at this. The CEO operating system personal audit, current ideals inventory, the should be benchmarks, all beautifully displayed. The gap patterns identified, where gap thinking is showing up and what it costs you. The gain measurement table, the gap to gain reframe map, one key insight, one commitment. Okay, now I'm going to download this and save this to my computer, and I want to share a thought with you as I do this. This is kind of a rhetorical or hypothetical question, but one of the reasons that I'm excited about saving this deliverable to my operating system is because I believe it's going to A, make my operating system smarter, B, I also believe it's going to empower my operating system to hold me accountable to these strengths and weaknesses. As I deliver in my personal life or in my professional life, my operating system is going to know this about me. And so if it sees me acting small, I may build in some triggers so that my operating system can say, hey, Katie, this is an opportunity for you to step up, because according to your gap and gain audit, this is a place that you tend to play small, right? So here are just a couple examples of how we can use these in real life and business. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download so I can save this to my operating system. Then I am going to come back to the community. So we have an opportunity to engage with one another for feedback, insights, Q&A. So how did that land for everybody? Feel free to share, jump in the chat, pull yourself off mute.
Katie, what does that look like to save it to your operating system? Or like, are you talking about like your overall computer operating system or into Claude? I don't know what you mean by that.
Yep. The CEO operating system is a new and novel way to use AI on the desktop of your computer. So I do have Claude installed on my desktop, and I do have a file system and architecture and infrastructure that supports that operating system. So then when I run Claude, I can direct it to that operating system on my desktop. And for example, I have a morning check-in every day. So I will open Claude, I will select my operating system folder, I will say, read the chief of staff documents because that informs its work, and prepare to do the daily check-in. And I have some automatic triggers that are set to run overnight and bring information into my desktop first thing in the morning to review and kick off my daily non-negotiables, which are a handful of lead gen activities, health activities. And so putting this file into my operating system is going to help my operating system get smarter, more diversified, and more nuanced. Does that help answer your question, Donna?
Yeah, so it's something extra that you have added in that uses Claude to work, or like Claude uses it to direct what you're doing, right? Like it's partnered.
Yep, and I'm alpha testing this in real time in my own system, and it is a service that I am going to be offering our community very soon. And Chelsea and I are working out the bugs right now so that when we bring it to you guys as a paid offering, we will have more answers than we do today.
I gotcha. Okay.
And I see Larry, you got your hand up. How's it going, Larry?
Excellent class, by the way. Really, really
Thank
love
you.
it.
Thank you.
I am an ex-user, which Grok, I've been using Grok for years related to business, and so I've not used Claude. Do I continue to use Grok? It tends to be more vending machine-ish as far as like, yes, it has a history of your activities, but it doesn't, what you're putting here is like historical information, and yours seems to be wrapping your information really effectively.
Yeah, and Larry, I gotta admit, I have never used Grok.
Okay,
Part of the reason is because I don't have an X account,
right.
and I've just never felt super compelled to experiment with Grok. So I don't know a lot about it, and my I may misunderstand how it works, but I believe that Grok is kind of limited in functionality.
Okay,
And that other LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini have more functionality because it can exist outside of just the X ecosystem.
okay, makes sense.
So continue to use Grok, especially if you find it valuable in the work that you're doing. And you may consider supplementing with another LLM so that you can do some of the things that we did today, because the other LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude, if you have your memories turned on, will learn certain facts about you that make it slightly easier to complete these AI action classes like I modeled today.
No, I loved it. It was very informative. I've been a Twitter user, and I just kind of stayed with it, through the Twitter transition. So, makes sense. But I
Yep,
will
that
definitely take a look at it.
that completely makes sense. And I have paid subscriptions to all of the models, so I'm not promoting one or the other. I experiment with all of them, which Grok, I guess, is the only exception. And that's only because I don't have an X account.
Guys, thank you so much.
Yep, excellent. Chelsea, did you run the workflow the same time I did, or did you watch the demonstration?
No, I just watched you run it because you always provide such valuable information. But I did want to kind of bounce off of what Larry said, because Katie knows I'm fairly new to Claude, and I've been a diehard Chat GPT user for a good almost 3 years. And I pay for it. And I was kind of intimidated jumping into Claude because I was like, Claude doesn't know anything about me. Like, how am I going to start from scratch? So I went into Chat GPT and I looked at the memories and I was like, okay, well, some of those don't even really apply to me anymore. I've already grown so much since I've been on Chat GPT. So I just asked Chat, like, hey, Chat, can you do me a favor? Can you give me a quick rundown of all the things you know about me? And I exported that, literally copy and pasted, and threw it into Claude to get Claude to like pick up on what, things about me. And I crossed out some things that I was like, this doesn't apply to me anymore. I've outgrown this project. I'm not working on that. So I feel actually like I've spent a good week doing this back and forth with Chat to Claude. And I even dialed down in some projects that I was like, okay, I am still heavily focusing on this. Give me more data on this one specific project. And then I put it all back into Claude, and like Claude just caught up like nobody's business. And I just didn't think that would be possible. But now Claude's talking to me kind of like Chat used to, but it's actually more accurate because I could eliminate some of the things that I'm not even working on anymore. And it was easy. It was so easy. I didn't think it was going to be that easy.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Chelsea. Larry, you might see if you can get a summary from Grok about what it knows about you and then upload that into an LLM to get it up to speed faster.
Claude will, because I was using other ones and then I started using Claude after seeing these AI action classes too. I just liked it better. And it actually, if you ask it, it will give you the exact copy paste thing that you can put into your other LLMs to get all those memories. It was like, do you want to transfer everything over here? Just copy paste this. And so it made it even easier.
Yeah, that was one of the headlines here in the last couple of weeks. Thank you, Jennifer.
And Katie, can you share how to? I know we were talking in email about how to share those HTML documents. Like if I want to share some of those deliverables with other people, I couldn't.
Yes, yeah, and it's a simple but not obvious paradigm shift. Chelsea and I have actually been working through that the last week or so since we've been co-working together. An HTML file, one of the reasons that it's so powerful and that we predict that we are going to see an uptick in HTML file use in the AI economy is because HTML files can be read by both humans and machines, right? Because HTML at its core is a code, right? Now, a PDF is like hard for a machine to read, but it's easy for a human to read. And so HTML combines the best of both worlds. So when you get an HTML, so I clicked download on that deliverable that I created today, and it's now saved to the downloads folder of my desktop. If I want to email that to someone, all I need to do is attach it to the email just like I would a PDF or a photo, right? You attach it to the email just like a PDF or a photo. It's attached to the email. And then when the recipient receives it, they click on it and it downloads to their computer. Then they go to their downloads folder and they open it, and it opens in a browser, in a web browser. Okay. They may have to, you have to download the code and then open it in a web browser, and it will populate, it will illustrate itself the way it's supposed to. Does that make sense, Don?
Makes sense. Yeah, I was trying to copy paste the code and not just copy paste the file, and so it was not working so great. But that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I was shocked at how much different, because from what I learned in the other AI action class, my deliverable wasn't very pretty or user friendly. It was just a wall of text. So I just was like, hey, could you add some more graphics and break it up more to make the stuff that I'm supposed to take action on stand out more? And then could you put these things on a calendar at the end? It was just a couple sentences and it changed everything. But then the PDF version lost a lot of the pretty formatting. So I was like, oh, as I was trying to send it to a friend. So that makes a lot of sense. Just slide it over. Okay, great. Thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah, just attach it to the HTML. And yeah, I still have a lot of folks that I work with that are having a tough time making that leap of logic from like PDF to HTML, you know? So one of the things that I do in the code of my HTML is I'll ask it, make sure that if I hit command print on my desktop, because I work with some EDO clients that still want that piece of paper in their hand. But so I'll make sure that it includes code so that if somebody wants to print it, it still renders nicely for a printed format in a PDF. Because there's still going to be some city council member that is just not going to understand why I'm bringing an HTML file instead of a PowerPoint presentation. So I try to bake that in to like help cover that gap and make that transition a little bit smoother for folks who are still, getting caught up. Excellent.
Is there anything else that you can think of, Katie, that you learned along the way or that would be interesting or helpful as we move through these? Or any other skills? I've implemented a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot more. I mean, I would, shameless plug. I definitely encourage everybody to enroll in my AI Workflow Expert Certification course. It's Thursdays, 2 p.m. live. All the sessions are recorded, and you can catch up asynchronously if you have a conflict that day. But there are 9 modules in the AI Workflow Expert Certification course, and each module builds on the last towards AI fluency. So in our gray belt, for example, we start by breaking down the components of your role in your work. So it's almost like taking a job description and creating a graph that says, okay, how can AI help me specifically in my role? That's what we do in the first session, the gray belt. In the next session, the white belt, we learn what generative AI can actually do, the 10 input-output combinations that you can use with generative AI. In the yellow belt, we learn how to use AI for creating goals and action plans so that you can create your own custom strategies for any goal that you have. The orange belt, we learn how to use AI to create like an educational course so that you can partner with AI to create a course for yourself so that you can learn anything that you want, or you can create a course for your audience so that you can teach them your material or anything you want. In the green belt, we learn how to partner with AI for critical thinking, how you can use AI to learn more about high pressure, high stakes decisions that you need to make in a short amount of time, how AI can help you in those situations. In the purple belt, we go from process ownership to role ownership and understanding how AI is going to change the way that we fundamentally work. We are going to see a shift to individuals being responsible for a process end to end instead of just a segment of that work. And or rather, that was the blue belt. And then in the purple belt, now I'm getting confused. There's 9. Purple belt, we do brown belt, we do expert deliverables. We learn how to partner. Brown belt is creating workflows. We learn how to create AI workflows custom to anything that we want to create. So like in our AI action classes, we use workflows to learn the material and gain AI fluency and create a deliverable. In the brown belt, we learn how to create workflows for any deliverable that we would want to make in the world. And in the purple belt, we partner with AI to create expert level deliverables. So let's imagine that you need to create a deliverable, but it needs to go through more than one role or expert. Kind of like in the example of a marketing agency, it might go from, client intake, interview to a customer psychographics expert to a content copywriter expert. We can pass a deliverable from different experts. And then in the black belt, which is kind of our capstone project, we partner with AI to reverse engineer custom deliverables that you might get from an external consulting agency. So if you take a look at any external agency that you would hire to provide you with specialized services, that is what we learn how to reverse engineer in the black belt. And then you graduate and you get a certification. So
Katie, where is that again? So if I'm on your website, your Katie Milton Jordan website,
yep, the AI workflow expert certification is in simpleedo.ai. Yep, the katiemiltonjordan.com is kind of like my thought leader personal brand page, and simpleedo.ai is the AI performance school that houses the AI workflow expert certification.
Sorry, simpleedo.
I am going to wrap up today's session because I do have another call that I need to jump into at the top of the hour. But thank you guys for being here. Reach out to us if we can provide any additional support. And we look forward to seeing you next Thursday for workshop 2 in the Gap and the Gain. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.